I don't think the goal is really in displacing people in their through AI. I don't think anybody's thinking about that, or certainly not the people I speak to. Everybody thinks, how do I make my employee more efficient? How can they do more with less in less time?
All right, welcome to the Dial In podcast, the podcast about AI, technology, customer service, and everything in between. I'm your host, Gadi Shamia, the CEO and co-founder at Replicant, a company that automates customer service at scale using AI. And I have a very special guest, Dmitry Kokhanov. He's an investment banker and the first investment banker on this show. Here to talk about the future of AI and its impact on markets and the years to come. Welcome, Dmitry.
Gadi, it's a great pleasure to be in. Thank you for having me.
So, what is it that you do? Bring us into your world.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting world to live in because I get to experience and get to know fantastic companies and founders such as yourselves. Um, and I get to help people who have businesses get those businesses better, grow them, fund them, finance them, and scale them. And that could be organically, could be inorganically through mergers and acquisitions. Typically, in my world, you would read about some of these deals in various newspapers where a company would go public or the company would merge with another company or acquire another business. Um, and that typically just culminates in one press release and a result that's read in the newspapers. But usually it precedes many, many months, in some cases, many years of work that actually comes ahead of that. But the ultimate goal for all of these transactions is to ensure that the businesses are winning and succeeding in whatever market that they operate in.
Mm-hmm. And is there a specific sub-market you're focused on? The world is wide. I'm sure you're not dealing with all mergers, all acquisitions, all financing of all companies.
It's a very vast universe. I think from my specialty perspective, um, I focus on really two markets the way I define them. And the first one I would describe as communication software broadly, and that encompasses companies such as Replicant, but also many others in that ecosystem. So anything that has to do with communication and the software that enables us to do our business better day to day. That's sort of one part of the coverage universe, and I've been covering that space for a long time. The other piece of my coverage is broadly defined as vertical software apps, right? So anything that has to do with the vertical market. So it happens to be automotive, property like real estate, energy markets, anything where you need software to automate and get efficiency into equations when workflows managed is the space where I spend a lot of time.
Yeah, so when one hear about software acquisitions and this company acquired the other company, you or people like you are involved in it and help facilitate that. That's a good way to describe what you do.
We provide you with advice and the right perspective how to think about some of these companies that you would want to consider doing something with. And we help, in other terms, help you finance those acquisitions, you or anybody else, frankly, involved. Fund those acquisitions and find money, whether it's debt capital, equity capital, hybrid capital, some form of capital to actually consummate those transactions. That's right.
Yeah, so I will go actually in a different direction than what I thought I'm going to start with. Many of our listeners are contact center leaders. They are buyers of software, the software you cover. They were the TalkDesk customers or the Genesis customers are using Replicant or other solutions in the space, or maybe just most of them don't use any AI yet and just kind of learning their way into this space. And I hear many times people say, "What's going to happen if you're going to get acquired? What's going to happen if a startup I work with is getting acquired?" And right now with AI, almost the only option you have is to work with startups because the large companies just are behind. So it became very real for many people. You cannot choose between, I don't know, in my early TalkDesk days, people would say TalkDesk is new, maybe I should work with Genesis because have been around for 20 years. But right now, the only option you have if you want to be successful is working with a startup. So what would you say to a customer who says, I know I need to work with a startup because this is where the new tech is, but I'm concerned?
It's such a good question because it encapsulates the realities of today. AI is very nascent. I think we all appreciate, or maybe to some degree don't even appreciate, the full impact of AI to come. But I think we all realize AI is here to stay and to impact all of our lives to a various degree. That's very factual, and we see it every day. I think if you look at all the companies, there's plenty of examples where a lot of efficiencies have been gained through deployment of AI. And to your point, it's really the startups that are the bloodline of this innovation and new products that are being offered. I would say that from a more um, more existing, I'm searching for a word, but more kind of the matured businesses, perhaps is the right term, that have been in existence for a long time and perhaps have not focused on AI historically, just given the nascency of that. I think for them, they're realizing very quickly that it's the future of the industry. And unless they really agree to play along with it and to engage those startups and really to understand how they can transform their offering through AI, they might be left behind, right? That's the risk of new technologies being brought in. And so, from my perspective, and that's a very unique kind of viewpoint, certainly in the market, I see that day to day. There's many transactions that we see all day long where more mature, more established players are out there trying to acquire those startups to give them an edge in the world of AI and to bring this capability back to their customers, which is critical in today's market, right? The market has been transformed and it's here to stay. And so we believe it's going to be a combination of M&A, really large corporates going after and acquiring those capabilities. It's also in-house organic sort of growth. It's bringing people who are really capable and can build this organic competency in-house. That's going to be also a track big companies, more mature businesses will consider. But obviously that takes time, right? And so it's always this delicate balance around, do I do it organically? Can I do it organically, or can I really acquire this capability outside? That's always at the play of these companies. And there are numerous examples, specifically in the contact center space, very recently, it's the last couple of weeks, certainly as of today, where we've seen a number of acquisitions. One was NICE acquiring a German startup, Cognici, which was a leader in Dusseldorf. So it happens, I come from Germany, I grew up there, so very closer to home where I grew up. This is the first, I believe, or one of the first acquisitions of size of startups over $1 billion, or almost $1 billion in their case, especially in Europe, where this specific examples of what you're talking about is being brought in-house by NICE, right? It's this AI capability that is very adjacent and really the driver of future growth for NICE in their corporate strategy going forward.
And why do you think you spend a lot of time with the NICEs of the world, the large established companies? NICE is probably what, 40 years old or something like that, and you spend time with startups. Why do you think it's so hard for large established companies to build and innovate this type of technology, and they have to resort to acquisitions? Again, good for your business, but what's behind that?
I think it's the choice of trying to grow it organically and internally and harness this capability. But frequently, the innovation just happens to be outside of the mothership, right? It's somebody like yourself and Replicant trying to innovate and see things through a different lens than typically has been done before. It's more difficult at a big organization and market leader typically. And so we see it all the time where something new, something more exciting is being developed and grown outside of the house. And then at the end of the day, if you're a market leader and you're trying to innovate and stay on the top of the airwaves for your end market, you have to go outside at some point, either acquire something or you have to spend money internally, which is extensive amount of capital to continue to innovate, right? That's your choice. And sometimes, so it happens, you have to go acquire, and we see it moving all day long. It's very common theme in the market today.
Yeah, I'll tell you an amusing story. I think it's such a good illustration of that. SAP, large German company, acquired my first company, and I was 2002, so many years ago, and we had an SMB, small business ERP, enterprise resource planning software, and CRM software, And we end up meeting the executive there. It was Hasso Plattner, the legendary founder of SAP, and they decided to acquire my company. And after they've done that, I asked, why didn't you develop something like this yourself? And Hasso laughed and said, we tried and it failed once. So then I said, we have to create a startup within SAP. And we took 100 of our best engineers and product people. We put them in a building in Heidelberg, which is right outside of the IBM headquarters in Germany. Nobody has access to this building other than 100 people. And we gave them 2 years to go and build an SMB product. And they came and presented SAP. The same, they rebuilt SAP in this lab. It was as complex, it was as hard to use, just was a little nicer, newer user interface. And we just decided we cannot do it internally because the team just did not know how to prioritize what's essential to small businesses. And it's such a great example. If you think of spending 2 years, 100 engineers in an expensive building in Germany, it cost them time and effort, and the DNA forced them to almost build exactly the same thing. They clone themselves versus innovating. Do you see it a lot?
I think it's a very emblematic example of why I think you just answered the question why, right? Like you have to find um, the next edge of technology, and frequently you just don't find it in house, and so you have to go outside and find something else. You'll be surprised in every, and that's maybe interesting perspective for you because, as I mentioned, I cover all these different verticals. Virtually in every vertical, we see that example, right? And specifically to AI, because AI is so nascent and there is so little understanding, I think, collectively in terms of how it works, what does it actually do, what's my return on the investment, things of that nature, that developing this competency in house is very difficult to do, right? So almost by definition, you have to look outside of your mothership to find something that gives you that competency and that perspective, and you're kind of predestined to go after startups that are good at it today.
Yeah. So you mentioned Nathan a couple of times, and maybe another thing we hear a lot is people say, but AI is new. I don't have to jump on this wagon yet. I don't have to transform my, say, contact center yet. It's just starting. Maybe I will let some other people go and try first. How real is AI is today? Where are we in the cycle? Do you feel we are at a very early? Do you think that there's already impact in the market? Of course, just to sharpen the question, some companies definitely see the impact of AI. I don't need to ask you. I see them. There are customers. But as a market, are we still in the very early days where some pioneers are getting results, but the majority is looking from the sideline, or you start seeing it becoming more real?
It's a great question. I think the data points are overwhelming in terms of impact of AI. The interesting thing, we refer to AI. AI has been in existence for a long time, right? I think we're specifically referring to the new ways of engaging AI for productivity developed in the last couple of years. Now it's more
Yeah.
sort of Gen AI. There is a moniker for everything, but it's really a different way to use AI. That's really what we're thinking about. And the productivity gains and efficiency gains through deployment of this newer generation of AI are just immense. I think the interesting tidbit, I see all these different companies through the vertical lens, right? And so in some verticals, the deployment of AI has been just tremendous, right? Like a legal profession is one example, right? The ability to parcel through thousands of pages in a matter of seconds is just unprecedented efficiency gain for lawyers, right? Like people who are actually paid by the hour. Instead of having 20 people parcel through those thousands of pages, you suddenly can have AI do this job in a fraction of a minute and give you pretty much the same output that you were seeking from a group of people who did this manually before, right? This is a real return on investment and an efficiency gain. That's one example. The other is DevOps, right? So folks that really develop the software day-to-day basis, um, quality assurance, all sorts of functions that are critical to do this day to day that can be automated at ease today. So all of those things have real efficiency gains. And I just want to be clear about one thing. I don't think the goal is really in displacing people in their through AI. I don't think anybody's thinking about that, or certainly not the people I speak to. Everybody's thinks, how do I make my employee more efficient? How can they do more with less in less time and ultimately do more for me as a firm? I think that's the goal that I hear from everybody, and that's where really we're trying to get to, I think, collectively.
And what do you see specifically in the, you mentioned legal, which I agree, it's such a great vertical for AI. Tons of data, summarize it, analyze it. It's exactly where LLMs were born to work on legal stuff. What's your viewpoint on customer service? Well, what are some of the trends you've seen there? What's some interesting learnings you had recently?
I'll give you a very specific example that I think is very emblematic of this question. My family actually was flying from Germany back to the States. They just got back yesterday. And they were flying through London Heathrow. And London, as part of being UK, now independent from European Union, they've instituted a customs control. So you actually have to cross customs before you board another flight as a transit, and you have to pay a fee. Now, if you go through the same terminal, it's technically not a transit, so you don't have to pay a fee. But you have to fill out a bunch of paperwork in advance if you're planning to do that, right? And so I wasn't sure. Do I have to pay a fee? Do I have to fill out paperwork for my family? I'd rather err on the side of caution and do it. And so I went to United App and I said, as my family planning to pass the customs and controls in the UK? And if so, do I need to fill out the paperwork and pay a fee? And immediately, within 2 seconds, I kid you not, maybe 1 second, I got a response that's automated, fully automated customer experience, no agent involved, that said, your family is not going to pass through customs control. You do not have to pay a fee. You're good to go. And that just practically just saved me, I don't know what the fee was, maybe $35 per person. That's three family members. That's over $100. One question, one answer, that's return on investment right there for me as a customer, right? Previously, as you recall, some agent will need to pick up this conversation, process it, understand exactly what you want. Takes a lot of step and a human involvement. At this point,
Yeah.
this was as efficient as
She
1 second.
she chat with you about the weather in London and to this point, a lot of people are concerned that we are losing the human touch. And I think that the question I'm asking myself, having been in the space for a long time, are people really calling customer service for human touch or to solve problems? And I tend to be on the camp of, for most people, most of the time, you just want to get a resolution, and AI is really good at that. And in rare cases, you want to get like a human connection, but customer service agent is not your friend.
I completely agree with you. And listen, I think it's for the best because ultimately you want to have agents help you in those difficult cases, like truly situation that you want a clear resolution and hand-holding and understanding of a complexity that AI would not be able to replicate, right? But for those basic cases where I have a question, I just need an answer, AI is a fantastic add-on and just adds efficiency and doesn't distract humans from really solving the problems they need to be solving.
So let me ask you a very, like we talk, we are in a micro level now. Let's go super macro. The entire industry, not specific sector or company. 5 years from now, like maybe I'll preface the question this way. When I started getting into software as a service in 2005, six, I betted that my bet was technology companies are gonna grow, the sector is gonna grow because people are gonna find more vertical, small users of software, and people are gonna have more software and pay more for software. So less SAP, Microsoft, maybe an Adobe are three big vendors, and that's it. To I have 100 of vendors, I pay them less, but I end up the IT pie is much larger. I think if you look at the last 15 years, totally worked. You look at AI now and ask yourself, what's going to happen in 5 years? Just overall market. Is this really the engine that people think it is and will continue driving the economy? Is it not? What's your best prediction?
That's a truly amazing question. I don't know if I have a really good answer for you. I'll just be honest and transparent about it. Given where my purview is, I see certainly companies, they're market leaders today, right? And AI is in some cases part of it, in many cases it's not. Um, the future certainly has AI written all over it today. But I say that with a caution because as you witnessed over decades of your experience, and certainly the case for me, it's not even every couple of years, there's something new and something unpredictable that pops up on the horizon that we never thought would be the future, but somehow for that moment it tends to be. And so I see this wave of AI maybe as just one vector that we're taking for years to come, for a couple of years to come. But I do wonder if in a couple of years from now, there's another vector that will pop up, as it commonly happens, where it might take us completely different direction that we didn't even think would be possible. And maybe it's not AI, right? AI just comes in waves, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
It's going to play out. It's going to be the future. It's going to become ubiquitous in day-to-day use, especially around customer experience, as you were asking. But then something else is going to pivot us. And that new wave, I have no idea what it is. And that's the beauty, perhaps, of why I love my job, because I don't know what's to come, but I know it's going to be exciting and changing, life changing for all of us in the future.
Yeah, and the way I think of these waves, by the way, I agree with you, and then still think that the waves that we've seen in the last several years, or even 15 years, are riding on one another. And AI rides both on the SaaS wave and the mobile wave, because if we are in an on-prem world, imagine AI would develop on an on-prem world, which it could have. A lot of the training for AI actually happened in what you could consider an on-prem world, very dedicated server set. How would you distribute it? The growth of AI would have been stunted because you will have to go and deploy it in machines. The fact that we're in a SaaS world create an infrastructure for people to deploy AI almost instantaneously into their apps. It's the same with mobile. Like the fact that AI can now enable your mobile experience with United is because of the mobile revolution. So these two are complementary, which the one thing that I might hope for is if there's anything new, it's going to ride on this wave and continue enhancing the previous waves. So specifically for the contact center communication space, and maybe it wouldn't go 5 years, next year, end of 2026, what are we, so a year and a half. What do you think, what's your best guess, not specific companies buying specific things, but just as a trend? How would this market look differently in a year and a half?
I think it's going to be a market where there will be uniform belief, which I think today it's almost there, but it's getting there, that AI is key part of enabling that market. I believe it's going to be a market that will see a number of large players in it, as we have them today, all heavily adopt AI. And the transaction of NICE buying Cognigi is a perfect example of that trend, is bringing on newer, better, more efficient tools to really help their customers do day-to-day tasks better, more efficiently. We'll continue to see that. I think from the broader market perspective, that the universe has its own champions, but I don't see that dynamic changing. I think there's probably 5 largest companies out there that are operational at market. I think they'll still remain to be there. But what they will look to do equally, and it's with AI and away from AI, is to differentiate themselves in some ways from one another through some means. And AI is probably the lowest hanging fruit to do that, because that's what everyone is looking for in these companies today. So I think we will continue to see that. And then from there onwards, it's a little bit less clear as to what's going to happen. I think ultimately the industry has its own champions, but as in every industry, and I've seen this movie many times in other verticals, I would think you will see some degree of couple of champions. You cannot have 20 companies in there. It has to be probably 5 that will converge. I don't know who they're going to be at the end of the day, but at some point it will become more mature and more stable industry. And I think that has to happen. So some degree of consolidation sooner or later will have to happen in that industry to create those top 5 champions, and long tail of other companies will probably find themselves as a subset of one of those 5-ish companies in that space broadly.
Great. So last question, I'll be even more specific. Let's see if you're a betting man. So 2017 was the year of consolidation in the contact center the service space. That's the time where NICE acquired InContact, Genesys acquired Interactive Intelligence, and Cisco made its own acquisition. Each one of them was about $1 billion each. They were all established on-prem providers buying software service providers, and this is what kind of shaped the next 7-8 years now since 2017. What is the 2017 of AI in your opinion? 2026, 2027? Just bet on the year.
Uh, uh, I think you will find in the next 3 years you'll find a similar dynamic. I can't I deliberately do not want to be precise because it's timing is not my forte. I'm not good at predicting timing. I echo your sentiment though completely that we are in a pivotal moment where transactions are prone to happen. So I certainly feel that way. I do think, however, that before those transactions, monumental, large acquisitions, mergers happen, I do think that some of these companies need to find their way either into public markets or some ownership change in some of these, especially private equity owned businesses, needs to happen. So, whenever that happens and there is open mindedness around sort of next, call it 5+ years of ownership under new ownership of those companies, or there happen to be public entities at the time, I think some of these companies will consider um, permutations of how do we consolidate the industry? Do we bring in this new wave of consolidation? And to your point, all it takes is somebody goes first, right? There's a first mover, then there's a second mover who's trying to compete with the first one, and that's what creates this chain of events where you create ultimately those champions and leaders in terms of businesses that combine at the end of the day, right? But it's a chain reaction that needs to be preceded by someone making the first move and being comfortable about doing these acquisitions and finding money to do that. And that's why I'm saying somebody first needs to really, for example, go public, have access to capital, or find a new owner in terms of private equity / sponsor who is keen to really deploy capital to do so.
So next 3 years, a lot of change in the AI space, if anybody had predicted any differently. Dmitry, this was fascinating. Thank you for joining us.
It was a great pleasure. I hope I was helpful to you and insightful to your listeners, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.